If you're like me, you've struggled to make your guitar playing more impactful, more musical. I've mentioned this before, but I think John Fogerty is absolutely one of the best players to learn from because his playing is so musical, it's so clear, and it's easy to play too. And that makes it easy to transfer into your own play. Let's do that today. Unfortunately for me, I didn't grow up listening to CCR. Why? Well, the two most influential people on me musically, my cousin and my brother, they never mentioned them to me, so I never heard of them. But lucky for me, a friend of mine in junior high did. I listened to CCR a lot over his house, and eventually I went out and bought Chronicle, which is a compilation of a bunch of their albums. Now, I bought the album because there were a bunch of songs on it that I liked. Fortunate Son, Have You Ever Seen the Rain, Who'll Stop the Rain, and maybe my favorite, Lodi. But there was one song in particular that really threw me for a loop because I'd never heard it on FM radio, and yet it taught me a lot about guitar soloing. But the amazing thing is that it doesn't even have a guitar solo in it. In fact, it barely even has any guitar in it at all. Now, how could it possibly teach me or anybody else anything about guitar solos if there's not even a guitar solo in it? I'll get to that in a few seconds, but the song itself is As Long as I Can See the Light from Cosmo's Factory. Now, the song is in B and it's got kind of a Rhodes piano vibe, kind of like that. It's not one of their biggest hits, but it's a cool song, so if you don't know it, you should give it a listen. But okay, back to guitar. If there's no guitar solo in it, what can I possibly learn about soloing? Well, there's actually 3 big secrets about playing lead that I learned from this song, and number 3 is the biggest, so stay tuned. First, John Fogerty was the king of the chord tones, and this solo is no exception, even though he plays it on sax, not guitar. I'll play the closest thing I can to the sax solo on guitar, and you'll see what I mean. Okay, great. So we could talk about how I use the B major pentatonic primarily, but that kind of misses the point. What I'll show you is that he's totally outlining the chords. Let's check out that first line. Okay, so the first line is played over a B, and then briefly there's an F sharp major, and it goes back to the B. So the key thing is that this is primarily a lick over a B major chord because it starts and ends on B. What does he play? He plays this. Okay, so there's a lot of flutter in there, but basically that line is simply this. And that is an outline for a B major chord. So yeah, that first line is just the outline of a B major chord, and he's putting in some little doodads, some flutters. Let's take a look at the second line. So the second line is over a B major, a G sharp minor chord, and then back to a B major chord. And it goes like this. This note right here, this B, obviously belongs to a B major chord, but also belongs to that G sharp minor. And if we simplify that line, it simply is this. This G sharp certainly belongs to a G sharp minor, and this belongs to a B. But playing chord tones is not the only game in town, and I noticed that over one particular chord, he used some different notes. And I found out that when I was playing my own lines, it was a perfect place to execute that major to minor sort of thing to throw in some cool bluesy sounding licks. Check it out. Did you hear it? Did you see it? Over that E7 is exactly where I could throw in those bluesy sounding licks. Or if you're a scale thinker, it's where I could go from major pentatonic to minor pentatonic. So think about that. Whenever you have that dominant seventh sound in a song, the rest of the song kind of sounds like a hymn. But over that E7, that's a little bit salty, a little bit of a bluesy sort of thing. You can throw in your favorite blues lick and it's going to sound great. But another thing that this taught me was that I could learn a lot by listening to other instruments and not just the guitar. And it's really about listening. If you listen and build up your ears, you'll learn a lot more than if you just learn from tab or learn from fretboard diagrams and all that kind of thing. Listening is something that's probably more important than any of that stuff. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more that you can learn from John Fogerty. For example, click here to learn how his simple chord approach actually taught me to play like Jimi Hendrix. Hard to believe, but true. So click here, and I'll see you in the next video. I'll see you on down the road.